All right, just like that, we are live with Coach B. How are you, my friend?
I'm fantastic, Carl. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, dude, this is so cool, and it's cool because you and I have actually been podcasting together for a while on the Meta Athletes Playbook podcast, and to be able to do it here is pretty special. So thank you for taking the time and making it happen. You're at work right now. You're in the office.
I am, and I'm really humbled too. Like I've said on the Meta Athletes podcast, and to you personally, like I remember watching videos with you and Kelly Starrett in the early 2010s era. So I'm very excited to be able to speak with you now too, because I remember those days of you helping Kelly with some of his videos as well.
Yeah, that was a special time, and it's so crazy to connect with people who found me during that time, and to see their evolution, and to see my evolution, to see that we continue to kind of like weave in and out of each other's lives. So pretty special, and. Just so everybody kind of knows a little bit about you, who are you? What do you do? Yeah, what is work? You're at work right now. What is it that is your profession?
Yeah, I'm a Division One strength conditioning coach. I've been one for well over 20 years now. I knew I wanted to be a strength conditioning coach when I was a senior in high school. Fitness and exercise and nutrition and performance has always kind of really dominated my life. I have a passion for athletics, and then when I found out that you could have a career of helping athletes improve and athletes get better, I was really fortunate to be able to find my way to the University of Connecticut and be able to start volunteering and interning there as a young professional. And it was really influential. The people that I met during my time there, as well as the contacts and the network that I've been able to make. But it's been my life. It's been my life, and it's been my career since I was 18 years old. And I've been fortunate to be able to perform it at a number of Division One universities. And where my current place is Quinnipiac University. I'm in Connecticut, and I've been here for going on my 15th year now, which is pretty incredible to think about. It's a long amount of time to be able to spend at one place, but I was able to build the program from scratch. There was no previous strength conditioning coach before me, so it's been a unique opportunity to be able to impart a culture, impart a belief system, impart a philosophy upon our student athletes, and to be able to see it grow, our program grow, has been really, really rewarding, and the success that's come along with it too.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm curious. I kind of know, but I'm curious about your day to day. What does a strength and conditioning coach do? Especially a D1, a Division One strength and conditioning coach. Yeah, what does your day look like? Right now, you're in the office. You're talking to me, but yeah, are you in the weight room, or how does it go?
Yeah, so my office is in the weight room, and the day to day changes depending on what time of the year you're in and what kind of sports you work with. I'm fortunate if I get to be able to work with our four winter sports, so men's and women's basketball and men's and women's ice hockey. So today is a day where our hockey teams, for example, they travel. They're playing in a different state, so they had to travel for the weekend. They play a weekend series away. And I've got our women's ice hockey team is going to train later today. So today's the day that we train. And then our basketball teams, I'll see one of our teams later today. So it depends when we're in season. It depends if it's a practice day, if it's a training day, if it's a practice and a training day, if it's a game day. What we do kind of depends on where we are within the frame of a week. And that schedule is going to look completely different if we were in our off season, where I'd probably see everybody every single day of the week. And what we would do from a training standpoint is going to change. Now, with our schedule at the university that I kind of work with right now, it's nice because a lot of our kids, we have training blocks that are blocked out in the middle of the day where they practice and they'll train. So it's not super early mornings, and it's not super early late nights. It's a nice schedule to be able to train and practice when it's optimal. So nobody has to wake up super early and lose sleep. So it's a nice schedule to be able to really improve our performance and really development.
That's awesome. And how much do you do teamwork versus one on one?
Yeah,
Is
so the
is there a nice
majority
little
of
division there?
yeah, so the majority of what we it's run like a practice, and the way our coaching staff would kind of run a practice where we'll train together as a team, and we run things pretty much like a practice would run. It's very organized, it's efficient, it's disciplined, and it's structured because we don't want to waste time. Like when we work with collegiate athletes in a collegiate weight room, we do have time restrictions, and we don't want to monopolize their time because they do have other demands they're going to pull upon them as student athletes too. Like they've got to go to class, they got to eat, they've got to meet with study groups, they've got to go to practice, they got to watch film, they got to meet with their coaches, they got to do all these types of things. So when we train, we have to make sure that it's very efficient, and so we're going to run it like practice. And just like a team practice would be run, if you have any listeners that are athletes and that understand what a team practice is, everybody kind of does similar things. And either before practice or after practice, whatever sport you're in, tends to be, if you're in a team-based sport, tends to become, that's when you get your individual work. And so from a training standpoint, and from how we kind of run our weight room, either before our team session or after, depending on time, or on another day we might not train, that's when you can do your individual work. And that's when we can work on your weaknesses, or maybe not a weakness, but we'll call it a constraint, or that's an opportunity for you to try to improve in a certain area. We're not going to neglect our strengths, but we're going to try to see where can we improve. If it's mobility, here's what you're going to do. If it's speed, or if it's power, or if it's conditioning that's holding you back, here's the things that we can try to work on. And we're going to work within your own personal schedule to find out when and where we can place those activities in, to try to help you improve to the best of our ability. Because we prioritize development, we prioritize improvement and getting better. And we joke that's our company motto. When everybody leaves, they hit a sign above the door where it says, "I just got better." So we try to impress upon our athletes that it's not about what we're doing, but it's the mindset that we bring into what we do, that's really going to determine the amount of results that you're going to get.
Yeah. So, the strength and conditioning room and your role as a strength and conditioning coach is to make the athletes more resilient physically, mentally, emotionally. What have you found to be the truest truth of strength and conditioning? What is it that strength and conditioning provides that specific practice like sports practice doesn't bring, or psychology doesn't bring? What is it about the strength and conditioning room that is unique and special? Is there anything in particular that comes to mind to you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that comes from regularly organized training is confidence, is improved self-confidence. And I say this to interns and young coaches that I have the opportunity to try to help, is that too many times coaches get fixated on the sets and the reps and the exercises, whatever. It's not about that. Like the biggest thing that you're going to be able to develop from an organized, consistent strength and conditioning program is improved self-confidence in the athlete. They're going to believe that they can do things that they couldn't do before. When I've seen an athlete do a pull-up for the first time and they've never been able to do one before, the expression on their face is priceless, right? It's a feeling of empowerment. It's a feeling of ownership that they've actually, they put the time in and they put the work in, they got better. And that's something that they can take away with them to anything, to skill development within practice, to a group project that they might have to do in a classroom, or it might be something that they need to do after school, after they're done with their collegiate career. It's going to be something that they can take away with them as they work on a team, as they work within a business, or they become a teacher, or they become a parent. The feeling that if I do something consistently enough, with enough intention and enough deliberate practice, I have the possibility that I can improve and I can get better at something. And that kind of lends us to, getting them to understand what having growth mindset is and all those types of things. And it has very little to do with the exercises that we choose to do. It's much more about the intention in which we decide to put into that exercise that's prescribed for us. So that's probably the biggest thing that, in my opinion, that a lot of athletes will get from an organized strength conditioning program, is that improved self-confidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's huge. And would you say that in order to deploy the technical, meaning the programming that everybody has to follow, the plan, that you need a specific culture to be able to deploy that? And if so, if the culture is important, which it sounds like it, because if somebody's hitting, the sign that says I just got better, there's clearly some culture development there that is important. Yeah, how do you develop culture with your staff and with the teams and athletes that you work with?
Yeah, I think culture is pretty much everything. It's almost this nurture versus nature, right? So like nature, like you're going to have talented athletes, right? You're going to have athletes with really good genetics, right? That's nature. And what happens is we want to put them in an environment where they're nurtured and they can showcase their talents as well as improve the things that they might not be as good at. An environment is everything, in my opinion, for that. And you can call it culture, you can create environment, you can call it whatever it is. But culture is really just shared values and beliefs. It's a belief system. And so within our belief system, it's extremely important that every athlete understands that they can improve and they can get better. Like that's an important part of what we do. And the culture environment that we have, it's positive, it's safe, and it's disciplined. That's very important for us. And the programming that we're going to be able to give them is going to be, like I said before, it's going to be structured, it's going to be efficient, and it's going to be organized. It's going to be organized in the philosophy that we kind of have within terms of training. Is it's good. We're going to try to reduce chance of injury. We're going to make them better athletes. So we're going to educate them. And those are extremely important things to be able to have within our culture and get them to understand what it is that we're doing from a training standpoint, what it is that we want to do from a programming standpoint, and what it is we want to do from an environment standpoint. And that's all going to be solidified by the things that we ask them to do on a daily basis, or expectations, which are non-negotiables, which is accountability, respect, and work ethic. And there's a lot of threes, right? Everything is like a little done in threes, and I think you can remember three things pretty easily. But it allows us to be able to clearly explain and define what it is our environment is, what our expectations are, what we're going to do for you. And at the end of the day, it's up to you to reap the rewards or reap the benefits. You just got to put the work in. You got to be willing to be hold yourself to a high standard, and you got to be able to treat everybody with respect, and you got to be able to work hard. If you can do those things in our environment, then it kind of starts to create a little bit of a snowball effect, right? If you start to do those things on a daily basis, you're going to start to see results. And then what starts to happen within our culture is that we teach them it's not about me, it's not about what I write down on a piece of paper, it's about you having ownership within the process. This is your career, this is your season, it is not mine. I am simply a guide that's going to help you along the way to help you achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. If you say you want to accomplish this and your actions don't match that, I will tell you, you are not helping yourself. So, and that's clearly understood by every single person that comes into the weight room. They understand that and they feel that. But more importantly, the upperclassmen within the program tell the new kids that enter the program, this is how things are. Don't try to go against it, because this is what we do. And if you don't do what we do, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb, and you're going to be recognized, not positively recognized, but you're going to be recognized to be able to change your behaviors to fit the demands. And if it doesn't work, then they usually don't last very long.
Yeah, what happens to those athletes that don't last very long? Do they still continue to play, or is their career over?
It depends. Sometimes they decide, you know what, this isn't the place for me. Sometimes it's too structured and it's too disciplined. But I'm very fortunate to be able to work with some sport coaches that kind of have the same belief system as I do. And so that there's really no disconnect from what happens within a weight room and what happens in the practice arena, right? So there's no disconnect. If there is a disconnect, it becomes much more challenging. Just like if you're working with people, one-on-one, but then they have a different coach who has a completely different belief system than Carl does, the athlete starts to get confused. And when the athlete starts to get confused, then they can pick and choose which way they want to go. Within our model and the way we kind of run things between, our practice and between training, the belief system is all the same. The culture is all the same. So the athletes don't really have a choice to make. Well, they always have a choice. You can do things to as everybody else is, or not do things as everybody else is. Like, they can always make that choice. And if they start to make the choice where they go against the culture, or they're not working for the culture themselves, that's when they stick out in a negative way. And sometimes that could lead to maybe not playing time, not producing to the expectation they want to, maybe looking inward and realize, like, how come I'm not performing to my expectation? What do I need to do? And so some of that self-reflection is always a good thing, because then if it leads to some growth, if it leads to playing the blame game and playing the victim, then that usually doesn't last very long. So they might
Right.
choose to go somewhere else, or end up retiring, or whatever it might be.
Makes sense. And do you have good relationships with the sports coaches? And are you in alignment, or are there some differences that have to be settled in order to provide the best service for the athletes? How does that go for you?
No, it's I'm very fortunate to be able to have really good working relationships with the sport coaches, and sometimes within strength conditioning and performance, sometimes that always doesn't work out that way, because sport coaching in the U.S. is a little bit different, right, than it is maybe in Europe, where you have to undergo, in other parts of the world, you have to undergo, like, taking exercise physiology and taking coaching methodology and pedagogy and different biomechanics. So coaches around the world sometimes have a little bit of a understanding of how to sequence and how to program and how to structure practices and periodize, whereas within America, like, a lot of our coaches don't have that experience. They're not, it's not in their formal education unless they took an exercise science or biomechanics or kinesiology as an undergrad, and that usually isn't the case. Most of coaches in America get jobs because of their athletic career, not of, like, what they know. So that's where I think strength conditioning performance coaches, athletic performance coaches, whatever you want to call us, are really important, if the sport coaches are open and receptive to what it is that we have to say and how we can ultimately help them. And sometimes it's a lot of teaching, and it's a lot of getting them to understand what stress is applied, right? Because everything is a stress: physical stress, practice stress, financial stress, social stress, academic stress. Everything is a stressor. And sometimes that we might need to manipulate and adapt to what it is that we're prescribing from practice and training standpoint, to allow the athlete to adapt from that stress that we're applying to them.
Yes, it's almost like you're more than just a mechanic. You're also kind of programming the race. You're getting them ready to be on the field. Do sport coaches come and check in with you to learn from how you're doing things? Because it seems like strength and conditioning, which may have seemed like this, like, separate thing that's just an accessory, is actually a huge influence in how a sports team is run and how each individual athlete thinks about their bodies and their crafts. I'm just curious to hear if you've noticed, or if you're feeling like the strength and conditioning room really has a bigger influence than what maybe a fan,
Perceived.
the perceived fan thinks it really has. Is that the case, or is that just something that because I'm a fan of strength and conditioning, I'm just projecting into the world?
No, you're spot on. I think you can probably see it a little bit more when it comes to, like, mainstream sport education and sport news. They'll talk about, like, what athletes are doing from a preparation standpoint and how they're training. You see it a little bit more prevalent within social media or on, like, ESPN, probably, than it was maybe 15, 20 years ago, like, where their off-season training wasn't as public. Now you can see things a lot more. Athletes will post their own videos, and I think it's really important nowadays. And I think a lot of coaches that start to understand how things have adapted and how things have progressed in terms of not only just using technology to be able to monitor and be able to track progress or what it is that we're doing, like, from a load standpoint, but also from a understanding of how can I best prepare our athletes for competing and keep them the most healthy. right? Whereas maybe before, and I kind of grew up and kind of developed during these times, is when more was better, and just working hard was good enough. Whereas now, I think there's been a paradigm shift. There's always shifts, right? You always go to one end of the spectrum, and you kind of always find the middle point is probably the place to kind of live the most. Where how can we best effectively keep our athletes healthy, but also prepare them at the same time? I think that's the secret sauce, right? How can you do that? And it's not just from training alone, and it's not just from skills and in technical work all the time. I think it's a blend and marrying of and understanding how all those principles kind of work in conjunction with each other to best benefit the athlete. And I think the coaches that best understand this, or are most willing to say, you know what, I don't know. Can you teach me how to do it? Those are the ones who have adapted the most, and those are the ones who I think are benefiting the most. Like, I think in classic example, I don't know the people at Alabama football, but I do know that Nick Saban realized that they wanted to make a change within how they did strength conditioning, and they brought in somebody, and I don't know who the guy is. I don't know his name, but I just know of things that they put out where everything is much more scientific. Everything is a little bit more structured. Everything is a little more emphasis on quality versus quantity, and I think they've been happy with the results, and it's showing, and they don't have as many injuries, and they're winning.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, my mind is going in various directions, but right now, where you brought me to was in this idea that having a state of the art training facility doesn't mean that you're going to produce the results, for example, and that sometimes less is more, and it depends on how well versed you are in just human biology and physiology and how the body operates, and then being able to take these universal prescriptions and apply them to the individuals according to what they need and who they are and how they function. And then there is the layer of that's the kind of the science of the body, human performance in general. And then you have methodologies, techniques, the different ways, the particular practices. Okay, we're going to back squat. What is it? A low bar back squat? Is it a high bar back squat? Is it a front squat? What are we going to do? How are we going to squat? What's the technique, the method that we're going to follow? And then how are we going to prescribe this? And of course, this depends on the season and wherever people are standing in their progression. And then you have the technology, which is the equipment that you use and the facility itself. What have you found is the most important update that needs to happen yearly for you as a coach and for your staff? Is it the understanding of human physiology? Is it the understanding of the application of a methodology? Is it improving the methodology itself? Or is it getting new technology and new equipment in and spending more money on the facility? Like, where does the update have to, where do you have to upgrade, basically, most often?
In my opinion, understanding the human psychology. It probably, it's one of the things you didn't mention at all, but in terms of how I coach and how I want my staff to be able to coach, we are in a people serving business. We are in a service of helping other people try to improve. And for us to be able to help others improve, number one, we have to improve ourselves, but then we also have to develop our relationship building skills to best connect with another human being. Because it doesn't matter how technical savvy I am, how technologically advanced we are, if I don't have the human interrelationship skills to be able to influence somebody else to do something that they, number one, didn't think they could do themselves, or number two, didn't want to do themselves, then the technology and the bells and whistles don't matter at all. So a lot of it truly comes down to understanding human psychology, being emotionally aware, being emotionally intelligent, being cognizant of all those stressors that are going on within somebody's world, right? We don't know them all unless we're willing to ask those questions. And somebody isn't going to be as forthgiving to give that information if they don't feel secure and comfortable with that individual who's going to be asking those questions. So I know may not be the most sexiest answer, but in my opinion, I think that's probably one of the biggest things, is to constantly upgrade and evaluate how can we connect, how can we develop a relationship, how can we effectively communicate to somebody else.
Well, I love that you're saying this, because I spend 99% of my time talking about emotional fitness and the importance of emotional intelligence and the application of it and the psychology of the whole thing. So I'm so glad you're saying this, and I think for many it may be surprising, because when they think about a strength and conditioning coach, they're probably not thinking about emotional intelligence or creating a safe space for sharing, a safe space for development. Yeah, so it's very cool to hear you say this, and where my mind goes now is I'm curious to know what does it look like if you were to draw a roadmap of the experience that an athlete has when they come into your weight room. What does it look like from the moment they join you for the first time until they move on and maybe go pro or end up retiring? What's the arc like?
I'd love to say it's linear, but it's pretty much a non-linear line. A lot of it truly comes down to how prepared they are when they enter. Whenever I talk to a recruit, there's 3 things that I often say to them that are really important. When you go to a college, no matter whatever college program you go to, Division I, Division II, Division III, whatever level it is, there's 3 things that are really, really important. Number 1 is you have to be able to compete at a high level. So when I say compete, you have to be willing to understand what 100% is. 100% effort. You've got to be able to get yourself to be uncomfortable. That's the first important thing. Nobody should outwork you. Like, that's something within your control. Number 2, be flexible and be mobile. Now, I know those are 2 different terms, but they kind of go hand in hand in my opinion. Because if you're flexible and you're mobile, you're able to get into positions. And if you're able to get in positions, it's going to be that much easier to train. And then the third thing is to be in great shape, because if you have a high level of aerobic fitness, you won't get tired, and when you don't get tired, you can display your skills longer, and when you can display your skills longer, you can position yourself on the depth chart that much better. And when you don't get tired, you can bend, be mobile and flexible over and over and over again. And what starts to happen is when people fatigue and they can no longer bend, that's when they're usually going to get injured or put themselves in a position where they're going to get injured. And then when they get injured, now it's going to be a longer road back. So if they can compete, if they're flexible and mobile, and they're in great shape, that helps them a lot. So what happens is if an athlete is unprepared, they don't know how to work hard, they're not mobile and flexible, and they're in poor fitness, they don't enjoy the experience because everything is hard. Everything is challenging. And then, we have to teach them these things. And sometimes they get frustrated. And sometimes they don't like to hear it because they've always been good and that with the work that they've done before. And now we're telling them, you know what? The work that you do now has to be different. The emphasis has to be different. The intention and the purpose behind it has to be different. And so that's an important part of the puzzle, is if they can start to master those things, then the line for them in terms of their progression over time starts to look a little bit more linear. But if they don't have those things, then it's going to be steps backwards before we can go forward. And so that's part of the process. And the other thing too is, like I talked about psychology before, is how do they speak to themselves? Like, I think that's one of the most important things that the athletes that I'm able to work with hears from me pretty frequently, is to choose positive words. Don't speak to yourself in negative words. Choose strong action sentences and words that you can do versus weak, poor words, right? Because then your body hears everything that your mind says. So when somebody says can't frequently, we have to often correct them out of that and say, well, you're not able to do it yet. We talk about the power of yet. Like, just add yet to the end of it, because then that's going to change your perspectives on how you look at something. But if you say can't, that's kind of having a fixed mindset, and you're not able to get better at it, where that's not what we want to do. We talked about getting better before, and that's the attitude that we want to have. Those are the words you have to be able to use too. And you've got to be able to speak to yourself in those positive ways so that you can actually get better. And like I said before, it's not about the exercise. Like everything I'm saying to you, like we haven't talked about like exercises. It's not about the exercise. It's about it's about knowing your why of why you're doing this, and how you do it matters so much more than what you're doing. So, so in terms of an athlete's arc and their progression, a lot of it depends on the skills that they come to a university with, or they come to a school with, as well as like how prepared they are. And if those things are set in place, then it's going to be much easier for them to be able to go through their path. But if they don't, then we've got to develop those skills within them. And we got to hold them to that standard quite regularly and quite frequently. And again, at the end of the day, it's up to the athlete if they want to improve at those things or not. Mm-hmm. If they want to improve at it, usually what starts to happen is they start to see success start to happen. When you start to see success happen, then it becomes, like I said before, like an avalanche. It becomes addicting. Like you want to keep doing it. And you want to keep building those habits. You want to keep improving. And then you want to help other people along too, because you understand how powerful it is.
Yeah, that's huge. And how do you guys measure success in the strength and conditioning room? So if it's not about the reps, it's not about the load.
Yeah,
is it about the wins or what?
We will test. Wins are out of our control too, right? Because we, like I tell athletes, we're working on the physical side, right? We work on the physical side. And if you look at a technical tactical model, right? You've got technical skills, and technical fitness is knowing your strategies, and you have that's your skills. Your tactical fitness, which is understanding your strategies and systems and plays and all those types of things. And you have your physical fitness, which is kind of like where I'm kind of working on. And if we can improve your speed, your power, your strength, all these types of things, we can help you perform those skills harder, faster, and longer. But now around that is all your emotional fitness, your psychological fitness, like your spiritual fitness. That kind of like holds and binds everything together, which we play a hand in. We also have a sports psychologist that helps too and serves as a guide. But wins and losses are going to be much more difficult to be able to pin back on strength conditioning, right? A lot of that comes back to recruiting too. Like if you don't have enough good players, you got no chance of winning.
Right.
Like so, recruiting plays a large role in that too. But how do we measure success in terms of the weight room? It's probably how healthy our athletes are, like how available are they to be able to play and perform. And that's challenging too, because there are things that are outside your control. Is like I often say, we're like our number one goal is to reduce chance of injury. Like we can't prevent everything, but we can try to reduce as much as possible. So a lot of that comes back to educating, because we might apply a physical stress and within practice and training, but what you do outside of the training realm is the most important. Are you eating the right way? Are you sleeping the right way? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you recovering? Because your ability to recover is going to directly impact how you can perform at practice or in the gym. So a lot of that comes down to practice. So availability is a big thing that we look at, but then also the other thing that we look at too is if our athletes are improving from their metrics. If somebody's goal is to improve their lower body strength, we'll look at that. We'll look at their vertical jump, we'll look at power, we'll look at their broad jump, we'll look at their strength. That's definitely something that we look at too. And really, and this one's tough to measure, but I'm much more of a qualitative coach than a quantitative coach. When I say qualitative coach, I look at movement, and we use exercise to enhance movement. And that's where we kind of look at things. But the biggest thing I want to look at is how are we moving? Are we moving efficiently? Do we have energy leaks? Do I see you breaking down when you stop and decelerate? Like if we do, then we need to be able to address those things. And those things are a little bit harder to measure. But a lot of it is based on like how an athlete feels. Do you feel ready to go today? Do you feel 100%? Are you sore? Are you tight? Like how are you adapting to the training that we're imposing upon you? So it's a multifaceted way that we would measure how successful strength conditioning is, but like number one is probably keeping them healthy.
Mm-hmm. And to kind of go by feel like that, is it all about self-awareness, or do you use tools to be able to measure that? Is there any like device? Do they wear like a puller strap? Do they have a Whoop band on? How does that work?
There are devices, yeah. You can measure somebody's HRV, and there are systems out there to be able to measure those. We don't have those. In terms of technology, we don't use those, but a lot of it is self-awareness. And self-awareness is something that you can have with you for the rest of your life. So the self-awareness is a large role in how we coach, and how I personally coach is really trying to get an athlete or an individual to understand their body, their mind, and their spirit. right? And using exercise to be able to try to get them to understand how to sense and feel those three things. Because if we can sense and feel, then you can control and change. And I spoke to an athlete yesterday about writing things down and about having a performance journal. And so you start to understand when you perform well, here's what I did before. So you don't leave success to chance. We're having a plan, we're developing routine, so we can understand how to become a professional in everything that is that we do.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. Yeah, talking about profession, I mean, you've been in this particular role in this particular place now for 15 years. You said that's quite a while. What keeps you coming back? What is it that drives you?
Helping other people. Honestly, it's probably something I realized years upon years ago, and I don't know when, but I realized on my own self-reflection of understanding what my why is. My why is truly helping other people become the best version of themselves. And it's cliche, like other people will say it too, but that is why I wake up. That is why I do what I do. That is why I say what I say. Is I really believe that everybody can improve, and I really believe that everybody has the opportunity to grow and learn and improve and accomplish. And when everybody starts to understand that and believe that within themselves, they can impact others, and they can impact others, and they can impact others. And then guess what? We might have a world where everybody, is a lot more positive. And who wouldn't want to be in a much more positive place?
Right.
So it is esoteric. It is high aspirations, but I've seen it and I believe it. And, I think it's really important to have your core beliefs and understand what your core beliefs are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, you have a family, you have kids, you have a lot going on, and then you have all these athletes that you manage, and then you have a staff, and you have a lot happening. Do you have any best practices that allows you to stay sane, perform well, and also improve, or are you just winging it?
Yeah, I sometimes I feel like I'm winging it. I do have routines. I am a creature of habit, and human beings are creatures of habit. And so I do have a routine. I write things down. I schedule. I like order, right? I don't deal with a ton of chaos, but I do have structures and routines that are always willing to change. They're adaptable, but I do and I think that keeps my mind organized. It keeps my body rejuvenated and allows me to perform at my best. But it's making sure that you have a schedule, making sure you have a routine, making sure that you have systems, right? Like I think I'm very much of a systems-based approach to how I program and how I train and how I kind of run my room. And I guess I'd say it had kind of like a systems-based approach to how I kind of live too. It's not robotic by means, but it is systems. Like I value my health, so I'm going to do things that prioritize my health. I'm going to exercise daily. I'm going to move daily. I'm going to make sure I drink a lot of water. I'm going to make sure that I prioritize my nutrition. And when I can do those things and I value those, I usually function at a high level. And so that is a systems-based approach, just like like how we would structure training. Like if we value movement, we're going to choose exercises that prioritize understanding how to move three-dimensionally. And if we value deceleration, then we're going to make sure that we have a systems-based approach to how we can improve our ability to decelerate. So I think it really comes down to having systems and being organized. And I wouldn't be able to do my family life without my wife. I mean, that's a huge part of like our of how we are able to best provide for them. But that's one of the things too, is I want to be able to teach them how to be healthy. I want to teach them what it means to accomplish things. I want to teach them what it means to be responsible. I want to teach them what it means to be reliable. Like those are important values within myself. So I got to make sure I hold myself to those types of things. And if I can do those, then I think I'm doing all right.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what are some besides the training and the nutrition? What are some other non-negotiables for you in terms of just making sure that you're taken care of?
Yeah, those are probably the biggest ones. I mean, I've gone through different routines of reading. Like there's been times where I read consistently for at least 20 minutes a day. And there's been times when I'll read consistently for 20 minutes a day, but it might be on my phone. You know what I mean? So sometimes I'll still read, but maybe it's digitally versus just like with a hardcover book. So I'm still reading. I guess at least that's the way I justify it to myself. And then there's been, I've gone through other periods where I make a concerted effort to stretch or to meditate. I'd be lying to say if I'm consistent at it. It's something that I think I have enough awareness of my mind where I can meditate while I'm doing other things. So I may not have to be continuously meditation where I am in a quiet place. I think a lot of meditation is just being self-aware and being present. So I have the skill set to be able to do those types of things. And I also understand when I'm not being present of how to make sure I can get myself back to being present. Mm-hmm. So those are probably the biggest things. Making sure that I eat well, that I train daily, that I improve, that I try to learn something every single day, and that's where the reading kind of comes into place. And then, just making sure that I'm aware and being present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and something that comes up for me as I'm thinking about you, and this is something that I struggle with, and that's why I'm going to ask you this: is do you have fun? Are you having fun? And are you scheduling fun into your time, or how does it go?
Well, define fun. You know what I mean? Like, fun, I think fun is like fun is finding joy, and finding joy is based on your happiness. And at the end of the day, you control your happiness. Happiness is much more internal than external. Yes, I can watch a funny show and I can laugh. That's fine. And I'll do those types of things. But I think joy for me is being able to impact others. Like when I come to work, I have fun. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't seem like work to me. Like when I get to be able to interact with another human being, like that's fun to me. Like that's joy. And sometimes the conversation might be serious or might be maybe not as lighthearted, but that's still fun to me. So I guess it depends on how you decide to have fun. It's not like there'll be moments like where we might have date night and we go out and stuff like that where it's kind of like just throw back and let loose of any kind of cares and freedoms you may have. But at the end of the day, like that's still internal. Like I'm deciding if I'm going to allow that to be happy for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree, and I guess it was a little bit of a trick question because let's say if you're an athlete, when you're a kid, you start playing a sport. Let's say it's tennis or soccer or whatever. It's just fun. You don't do it for any other reason than it being fun. And then eventually, once you start thinking about performance, you have to start to do all these things. And those things become grindy and not so fun. It's not so fun to be in the weight room suffering. That's not as fun as playing the game. But those are things that you have to do if you want to reach new levels of performance. And sometimes within that performance world, high performance world, the notion of doing something just for the sake of play disappears. And although you may experience joy, and you're able to access joy through the grind, the doing of a performance that is requiring that, the celebrations, the moments of being kind of carefree disappear, or they become fewer and fewer, and then eventually, you become very serious, and everything is life or death, and it can get a little lost. I mean, do you factor in play into the weight room and the way that you work with people, and do you do that with yourself? I mean, you said date night, and you have a little escapism, and you have some carefree moments, but is play part of the game when it comes to helping people?
It is. It's a huge part of it because when you play, it has an inhibitory effect upon your body, and it has an inhibitory effect upon your nervous system. And if your listeners don't know what inhibitory means, it unlocks, right? It's like taking the brakes off of your body a little bit. Whereas if you become you get put into a stressful environment, sometimes you increase tone and you get a little bit more facilitated, which can lock your body up a little bit. And so when you play, you learn how to relax. And when you learn how to relax, you learn how to perform. And that's what we want to get them to do, is we don't want them to be so tense and rigid, right? At the opposite end, you've got rigid, and then you've got like freedom, right? And so we want them to be a little bit more carefree and not so rigid when they perform. Now, we might want them to be rigid if they're going to do a maximal effort deadlift or a maximal effort squat or bench, whatever it might be, because we need to get very stable. But when we train, when we warm up, we want them to be a little bit more loose, right? We want to train them to understand how to have fun within the training environment. And, that's one thing that I've said before, is we want it to be positive, safe, and disciplined, right? So we want it to be disciplined. They understand that we're going to get work done. We want it to be safe, but we want it to be positive at the same time, too. We want to make sure that we laugh, because training isn't something you do because you're an athlete. Training is something you do because you want to be healthy, and we're all athletes, regardless if we're competing in a sport or not. But we want to make sure that we embrace the process and try to have fun with it. So yeah, we might play games. We might play catch. We might play different types of tag for a warm-up, which creates an inhibitory feeling for us, and the athletes will start to realize, wow, I feel better after that. But it's also based on being able to read the room and having some of that emotional intelligence to understand that I will always give them whatever it is that they need. If they are too loose and our details are compromised and our execution is compromised, and we might need to tighten things up a little bit and make sure that we get back in the right state of mind, so we can actually improve when we're not just wasting our time. But if everything is in working order and we've got good leadership and everything's their execution is a high level, their intent is there, then yeah, I'm going to crack a joke. I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to chirp you. I'm going to try to get the most out of you. Because sometimes I want you to prove me wrong, or I want you to be willing to be challenged. Don't run away from a challenge. If I challenge you to do something, don't run away from it. Have fun with it and accept it. And if you meet it, fantastic. If you don't, you'll get it next time. And a lot of that comes down to culture. A lot of that comes down to the environment. But it's a fine line, Carl, I think, between training to win versus training to train. And that's, Isvan Bai's kind of long-term athletic development model too. That's in there too. But there was a great paper that I read on Olympic level swimmers called the Mundaneity of Excellence. And they looked at these swimmers, and they looked at them over time, and they realized that the things that they did day to day were boring. They were mundane. They were mundane acts. But they did them with such intent and such execution, which is what led them to being Olympic level swimmers. Right? And there's a reason why very few are successful. There's more within the average than there are on the extremes. And you do need to be wired a little bit differently, but you do need to embrace a process and fall in love with doing the things that other people may not think are fun. So you have to be able to find fun within the hard. Or like people say, you got to embrace the suck. You got to be able to find fun in the mundane, and find fun in the fundamentals, and find fun in the routineness of life and practice. And when you do that, it's fun.
Makes sense to me, and I totally agree, and I love hearing these things. That's amazing. And a place where I've seen you have fun, and actually this is how we met, it was in the NFT space, the controversial crypto world. What got you into NFTs, and how are NFTs kind of playing a role in the way that you are deploying your knowledge and strength and conditioning at the moment?
Yeah, I got into this NFT space by exploring crypto and exploring and understanding what blockchain technology was, and I was really confused at the beginning of understanding what all these tokens were and what they were for and what their use cases for. And then I started to hear about NFTs, and the first place I heard about it was through DraftKings. They had the Tom Brady drop, and it's with his company called Autograph. And I first started to understand them as digital collectibles, as digital assets. Like I used to collect baseball cards when I was growing up, And I understood the concept of that. Then I understood the concept. Then I started to realize what a digital collectible was, and I was like, oh wow, like you can collect these, and they're going to hold value, when the value that it's going to hold is whatever somebody else would pay for it. And I started to understand what that meant. And then I started to explore more and get myself involved in the space. Then I started to realize what Web3 was, which is truly understanding that you have ownership within the internet, right? The internet, is which we know it right now, is we have no ownership, is that the big conglomerates own our data and own the information that we give them. Web3 is all about trying to regain some of that ownership back, but also have ownership of the things that that are digital. And we live in a digital world. We live in everything we do is digital. This is digital. You know what I mean? Like, it's the way we transact is digitally. Like, there's not a lot of people that carry around dollars or cash or like gold and silver, like, which is what people used to do back in the day. So cryptocurrency just made sense to me, and understanding digital assets just made sense to me. And through my Web3 journey, I've been able to meet people all around the world, because so much of what Web3 is built upon is community. And community is cliche, but it truly is. The people that you meet are going to be able to directly impact whatever it is, the token you may have. If you have a strong belief within the token that you have and the artwork that you have, that can help drive the value up of whatever it is that may be. And the community truly runs the business, and the community truly runs the project. And so there has to be conviction within that community. And I've been able to get myself involved with some communities that have high levels of conviction, and that spread the message that kind of like resonates within myself. And so I've been able to kind of develop a platform to be able to share what it is that I know about human performance, about psychology, about training, to anybody that's going to be willing to listen within Twitter. So that's how I've been able to leverage and be able to use my own kind of knowledge and wisdom to try to really help expand my reach, right? Because my current reach was the athletes I've worked with in the past or the present. And I realized that there's more people that I could truly try to impact. And Web3 and NFTs has kind of allowed me that grounds to be able to make those connections that I probably would have never met before, but also be able to help develop my voice to be able to impact, right? To influence, right? I like to consider myself a person of influence, not necessarily an influencer.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, you've been very active on Twitter, and you're really good at it. So I recommend everybody follows you on Twitter. What's your handle on Twitter? Is it Coach B Patel or?
No, it's B Patel 515.
Okay.
My Instagram is the same, and just trying to work on Instagram at the same time. But yeah, Twitter is primarily the place where I'm at.
That's awesome. Well, maybe we can get some clips from this episode, and we can get you on Instagram going as well. And how can people support you or can learn more from you? I know you work directly with the athletes that you have under your roof, but you are venturing outside, and you do have your side projects. Is there any way people can support you and engage with you, and maybe even learn more about the NFT space?
Yeah, so I do have a website, coachbpatel.com, and there's a lot of information they put up there. A lot of it was a massive brain dump during COVID about kind of trying to collect every podcast interview and every article that I've been in, and any kind of blog article I've ever written, and kind of put everything in one place. And I've created a number of resources to be able to help other coaches improve and help other individuals try to improve within their own physical life or mental life or whatever it is that they may want to improve. But I do have merch. I've created digital programs, and I think what's the most interesting thing that I've done most recently is through my website. I do offer digital training through either consults or nutrition consults, but I do have like pre-packaged programming that anybody can purchase, and it's just for anybody that's looking to try to improve. And they are staged within levels for between beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And what's interesting is I branded them with one of my NFTs, which is called a Lazy Lion. And through the power of ownership of a lot of these NFTs, they grant you intellectual property, and they grant you the IP. So I've used the intellectual properties of my lazy lion to kind of blend my Web 2 persona in real life and my Web 3 kind of digital persona together. So my lion represents me, and I think it's a really strong portrayal of myself, because in my opinion, lions are leaders. I consider myself a leader. Lions are strong. Lions are efficient. They don't waste a lot of energy. When they want to go for a kill, they go. When they want to rest, they rest. So the symbolism of a lion really truly represents the symbolism that I try to portray with myself and how I coach and how I uphold myself. And it only made sense to be able to try to create training programs based off of my lazy lion IP. And what's really fascinating about what they did is they have an OG, like the older lion, and then there's a teen lion, and then there's a baby cub lion. And so I use each of those as representatives of different programs to represent how training is a journey, and how just because you do one training program doesn't mean that you're gonna set every record on fire. Like, it's training is an accumulation of little things that you do over the course of time. So I really wanted to be able to portray that. But the thing that I did was I was able to not only have digital downloads off of my website, but also package them as NFTs. And so when you purchase one of my training programs called the Lion Strength Series, when you purchase them as an NFT, you have ownership of it. And you get the program, and the contents are unlockable. So when you buy the NFT, you can unlock the contents within it. And usually they're all 4 weeks. Some are 8 weeks long. I have one that's 16 weeks long. After you're done with the program, you can gift it to somebody else because you own it, or you can resell it back on an open marketplace. And then you can get your money back if somebody else chooses to purchase it. Or you can hold it. You can repeat it if you want to, but now you own it. And upon completion too, I'll send you, it's called a POAP, which is a proof of authentication protocol, basically another NFT that proves that you did it. So now you have a certificate, like, you know what? No, I did this program. And people love to collect. People love to flex, or people love to say, I did this. And these are things that prove that you just did this. So that's how I'm leveraging my what I know and my skill sets to be able to use within Web3.
That's amazing. I had a feeling this was going to happen, which is that although we're coming to the end of this episode, you're going to have to come back on the podcast, and maybe we'll do it in a few months from now when you have more data on how it's going. But I have a sense that any coach out there that's listening to this is starting to get some ideas and thinking, wait a second, maybe I should be paying attention to the NFT space, because where the business is going and where the industry is going is going to require to become well-versed in this technology to be able to make a greater impact. So, if you are willing to come back on the podcast in the future, that would be amazing to be able to share some of the intricacies of this. Coach B, thank you for being here, and thank you for joining me today. Any final words, anything that you would like to say to wrap up?
No, I really appreciate the conversation. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be able to speak on your podcast and speak with you. And then, thank you for anybody that's listening. And feel free to reach out to me on via socials or through my website too. Happy to connect with anybody who really wants to get better and level up.
Cool. And I'll leave the links in the description so everybody can click and listen in or read in, or even just join you in one of your adventures. So thank you for being here. I appreciate you, my friend.
I appreciate you too. Thank you.
All right.